Hello and welcome to another episode of the Childless Not by Choice podcast, where my mission is to recognize and speak to the childless not by choice women and men around the world. Civilla Morgan here. I am spreading the great news that we can live a joyful, relevant, and fulfilled life, although we did not have the children we so wanted. I also want to welcome you even if you do not fit the demographic. Maybe you did not want children. Maybe you have children. Thanks for tuning in. And welcome to episode 121. Well, before we get into today's show, why doesn't the church talk about childlessness? I would like to stop and recognize that this month, the month of July, 2020. Now it's no longer quite that evergreen, but that's okay. This month makes 5 years of podcasting, speaking to and encouraging the hearts of the childless not by choice community globally. What an honor. The platform itself is slightly older, with the podcast becoming the center of the platform. It does not make the other aspects of the platform, the blog, the community, the website, and the Facebook sites and groups any less important. But honestly, the podcast is what really gets the word out, right? Once you listen to the episodes, hopefully you are curious enough to come in and explore the rest of the platform. If I stopped podcasting today, I would still see this as one of my great accomplishments. I don't mean this in a self-congratulatory way. I believe the goal of creating a place for the childless not by choice community to come to, whether it is the Facebook groups, the newsletter, or the podcast, a place has been carved for us, the childless not by choice demographic, with this podcast, this platform. And I am grateful God chose me to do it. I'm even more grateful that you are listening, because that means you are finding value, getting help, and finding commiseration and community. And you know how I feel about community. So once again, thank you. And there is a lot more in the show notes than what I have said here. So please do visit the show notes. Please visit the show notes every show you listen to. Every episode is chock full of great information. When I listen to podcasts, I personally browse the show notes when I'm listening, and even while I'm listening, unless I'm driving, of course. Never browse show notes while driving. In fact, as a podcaster, I listen to podcasts about podcasts. And those particular podcasts I listen to while I am at home at my desk, because I sometimes take notes and follow up on suggestions, literally while listening to the podcast. I've done that before. And all of the suggestions that just make this podcast even better. So the point of that is, though, some people have told me that they listen to this podcast without distraction. Some of my podcasts I listen to at night. Just find your podcast listening groove. See what works for you. I actually had our meeting, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, but we had our little Childless Not by Choice Zoom get together, and one of the newer members of the group said that when she found my podcast, she just started binge listening. She does a lot of craft work, and so she's sitting there doing her crafts and binge listening and just... She told me, yes, people say this to me all the time. Again, I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you what she said. And she said, my voice is very soothing and it just really calms her when she's feeling, stressed out about the whole childlessness issue. And so, look, I am just really grateful that I'm here and that I'm doing this and that you are getting some type of help out of this podcast. I'm honored. Truly honored. So thank you. And don't forget to spread the word and, let other people know. A lot of people find the podcast by doing searches on social media. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you searching and finding me and tuning in and listening. It's just awesome. I can't tell you how much it means. 5 years, 121 episodes. Let's hope for another 121 more. And keep on going. Let's see what happens. You have to send me episode ideas. Sometimes I have no idea what I'm going to talk about some months. And so Again, if you ever have episode ideas, let me know. I got a couple of episode ideas out of today's meeting. So just let me know if there's anything that you haven't heard me talk about when you go back into the catalog, or maybe you want me to revisit something. Maybe it's a pretty old episode and you want me to go back and revisit. I'm personally scared to go back to my old episodes. I listen sometimes and I cringe. So if you go far back enough and you feel like, maybe she needs to update this or revisit it, let me know. I don't know. There might be something back there that I don't even remember talking about. Although I think I remember most of my episodes. But anyway, you know how that goes. So a great big thank you to my Patreon contributors. You guys know who you are. Thank you so much. Your contributions every month go towards paying my podcast producer, paying my website manager, and all the great stuff that I have to take care of every month. So thanks for your patronage. And if you are listening and you're not part of the Patreon group, please visit Patreon. Visit me at Patreon and check out the site. And if you want to make a contribution, monthly contribution, you can make a contribution for as low as $5 a month. It's patreon.com/childless not by choice. Patreon.com/childless not by choice. So that will help. And of course, if you want to PayPal, you can PayPal books by Civilla Morgan at gmail.com. As I said, all of that money that goes in there, the Patreon money goes into my PayPal account, and any direct PayPal payments go into the PayPal account. Those all go towards paying the various fees, monthly fees that I pay to keep this show running. And, there's an ad in there. I talk about Stitcher. I've talked about it the last couple of episodes, so you know the deal. Check out Stitcher, and you can get the paid version of Stitcher for $4.99 a month or $34.99 a month. And I use Stitcher for most of my podcast listening, but I am subscribed to almost every podcast app out there because I want to know how my shows, really, I do have 2 podcasts. So I want to know how they show up in that particular app. And so that helps me when you have questions about a particular app. You want to know how maybe the show shows up in Spotify, for instance, or Himalaya, or Podbean. And so I'm subscribed to all of those and more. And Stitcher is the one I listen to quite a bit, or listen on quite a bit when I'm listening to my more than 50 podcasts that I'm subscribed to. I try to get rid of some of them, and I just brought more on. Okay. I'm a podcast addict. I love listening to podcasts. I have learned so much from listening to other podcasts. You would think that I would only listen to mine. Most podcasters say they don't even listen to theirs. I record like I'm doing right now when you're listening, and then I go back and listen. I search for mistakes and edits, and then I send my show to my podcast producer, and typically they know what to edit out, but sometimes I want to be sure, so I send them the edits, and they're like, they know me. I have a podcast producer for each podcast, so they pretty much know who Civilla is. Interesting. And I thank them for it. They know I appreciate it. So yeah, if you want to check out the paid version of Stitcher, you can look at the show notes, and it'll tell you what you get for the paid version. And if you do subscribe for the paid version, be sure to use the promo code not by choice. Not by choice. And, just a little tidbit, the paid version of Stitcher has smart recommendations, playlists, car mode, sleep timer. So just check it out. If you have any questions, let me know. As I mentioned in the last episode, on Mother's Day, a couple of months ago at this point, we had a nice little get-together in our Childless Not by Choice with Civilla Morgan Facebook group. It was nice. It was a nice time to chit-chat with everybody that was there. And we did it on Mother's Day for obvious reasons. We needed a place to go to on Mother's Day, and what better day when moms, and look, remember, if you're a mom and you're listening, we are not jealous. We're happy for you. We have moms too. And although mine is gone, I miss her dearly. We all have moms. So we're not being haters, but I thought that would be the best day for us to get together. And it really was. The ladies really enjoyed having a time of chit chat and commiseration on a day that can be quite difficult. By the time you're listening to this now, we had our July meeting. This time it was in Zoom. And I think going forward, we're going to have it in Zoom. And that will give everybody an opportunity to come on video or not. Just join in without video. If you're familiar with Zoom, you can join without video. It just gives it gives us more time to chit chat. I think it's a little bit more commiseration time than on Facebook video. So I'm hoping to have our little get-togethers at least every couple of months. Not every month. I cannot commit to that, especially since you guys know, you all know, some of you know my schedule. It's crazy. And so I would do it maybe in a couple of months. So next time I'll let you know before it happens. And as long as you're part of the Facebook group, Childless Not by Choice with Civilla Morgan, you will get the link because I won't post it publicly, of course. I'll only post it in the Facebook group. So you have to be a member of the Facebook group to know what the link is. And come on in and join the conversation. There's a lot of great conversation going on in there. And as we're getting to know each other better, it just makes for even better conversation. It's a strengthener. Community is a strengthener. And when you have other people who are dealing with the same thing you are, and understand what you're dealing with, the really tough things that we deal with as childless, not by choice women, the difficult experiences that we've had, and we can talk about it, it strengthens us. Just ask anybody that is part of a group, an affinity or whatever. It's a strengthener to get together with people who get it and who understand the tears or the fears or the, what's going to become of my life type of thing. So if you are not a member and you are childless, not by choice, come on in and join the conversation. We've had several new members come on in, so don't be a stranger. Well, one of the ladies in the Facebook group, speaking of the Facebook group, she asked, why doesn't the church talk about childlessness? Childless women, barren women, as the Bible calls it, or calls us. And I got to thinking that the reason the Bible never talked about a barren woman who remained barren, remember, all the barren women in the Bible stories that we know about, they ended up having children. So then church folk are left to think from a wide range of thoughts to, just give it time, all the way to what did you do wrong to what are you doing wrong? Because we must be doing something wrong not to have children, right? I was talking to a friend about the fact that I was going to be working on this episode recently, and she said, well, what about Anna? So let's talk about Anna for a minute. And I'm talking about Anna, not to be confused with Hannah, because Hannah begged God for a child and ended up with 6, including her firstborn, of course, who would eventually become one of the most known prophets in the Old Testament, Samuel. Not only was Samuel a prophet, he was a counselor to kings. So she got her prayers answered. But Anna, well, according to the New Testament, Luke 2, verse 36, Anna was a prophetess who was quite elderly by the time she is mentioned. She had been married for 7 years and then widowed for more than 80 years. She never remarried, instead spending her time in the synagogue praying and fasting. She met Jesus when his mother brought him to the temple as a baby. And as far as I have researched, she never had children. I mean, if you know something different, let me know. But I've done extensive research and I can't find where she had children. So that's Anna. Everyone else, all of the other barren women mentioned in the Bible who were childless and cried out to God, got an answer of yes. Rachel, Hannah, Sarah, young, old, somewhere in between, they got their child or children. Sarah had Jacob, Rachel had Joseph and Benjamin, Hannah had Samuel and 5 other children. Oh, by the way, the woman with the issue of blood, I don't know, she may have had children before the issue. There is no mention of that. Nothing came up in my research on whether she had children or not, just in case you wondered about her. The question and the title of this episode is, why doesn't the church talk about childlessness? But my question is, why didn't God talk about childlessness? Childlessness, as in the woman who never got the child. Well, I have some ideas. And, well, let's see. First of all, I'm quite sure there were barren, also known as childless women in that era. Childlessness, it can't be anything new. I mean, just biologically thinking, it would make sense. And remember, the women I mentioned earlier initially could not have children, and they're from that era. Also, remember, women were considered next to nothing if they were childless. Okay, well, they were considered worthless if they had no children. In fact, although Hannah's husband loved her dearly, when he realized they weren't having children, he brought on a second wife. He had to have the children to carry the family line and maybe whatever other family business he had going on. Today, in some parts of the world, women are still looked on with disdain if they cannot have children. But listen to this. If a woman was wealthy enough, she could have a servant have a child for her. This is about to get juicy. That's what Sarah, Abraham's wife, and Rachel, Jacob's wife, that's what they did. And, well, initially. They had their maids sleep with their respective husbands and then raised the children their maids had as their own. Well, until in Sarah's case, it was no longer convenient. You see, Sarah's maid had Ishmael, but then her maid began to forget her station in life, and Sarah was not having any of that. So she tried to have them, the maid and her son, her husband's son, sent away. You can read the story. The link is in the show notes. So anyway, we now live in a society where, although we run into the random person who does not understand our childlessness and the pain that can come with that childlessness, I believe the women in that time had it much harder than we do today. Yes, if we are childless and in some cases also husbandless, we have concerns about our elder years. We are the sole breadwinner of our household. People wonder what is wrong with us. Really? What's wrong with her? Really? Back then, a woman's son was her retirement plan, you see. And basically, the more children she had, the better her elder years would probably be. But back to the question. Why doesn't the church talk about childlessness? Why wasn't there a direct story in the Bible about a woman who never had the child? Yes, there was Anna, but, well, then why wasn't her childlessness confirmed or highlighted? Why wasn't there a direct story about a woman like me? Like you, if you are listening, and you are childless not by choice. Could it be that there are so many problematic layers to the human condition, and in this case the issues around childlessness, that the church, like society, they just want every aspect of our lives to fit neatly into a box, and when an issue does not fit, well, better to look the other way, remain silent, and highlight the miracle baby. Highlight the woman who has children. We all love those cute little cuddly little things, don't we? No, I'm not bitter. Trust me, I'm just trying to be funny. But really, we all like to see the cuddly baby and the giggly baby, and we just want to talk about that. So if you cannot have a child, well, it's not like the church does not address the other issues people come into the church with, such as alcoholism or adultery or lack or even hate. But childlessness? Well, maybe you're not praying correctly, or back to what I said earlier, something is wrong with you, or you're doing something wrong, you did something wrong. In too few cases, the church talks about the true life facts that God does not answer every prayer the way we want or ask. Some women will not marry. Some men will not marry. Some couples will not have children. Does that make us weird? Let me take a little bit of a turn here. Does your church have a singles ministry for people to be normal in their singleness without making us feel like we're attending a meat market every time there's a singles event? Could we have a singles event where we can allow people to possibly meet their future spouse organically? Can we have conventions where we have a breakout session for childless couples, childless women, etc.? Is it possible for the church to see us instead of looking the other way, instead of treating us like unanswered prayers? Well, I have hope. I really do. I have hope. We are living in a time of great change, and that great change is going to include the church, whether the church likes it or not. And I am hoping that change will allow for more inclusivity of those of us who tend to live on the fringes, in the cracks, as in we tend to fall through the cracks. And then we pretend we're okay, but we know that on some level we are being judged. Judged that we did not get the spouse. Judged that we did not have the child. Judged because our family of one, or if you did get the spouse, the family of two, doesn't quite look quote-unquote normal. Look, the fact is, I don't know why God didn't mention the barren woman, but I do know that there's no excuse for the church not to mention her, to mention me, to mention you, because there are other issues God did not go into great detail about, but the church has a definitive or a definite opinion on how to deal with those issues. I think the church may be having a tough time dealing with childlessness because, well, one of the reasons may be that scripture where it says, "And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth." That's Genesis 1:28. Most theologians take that to mean go and have tons of kids. And hey, maybe so. But some time back, I had a conversation with someone who said that in the case of the childlessness, it could also mean for us to be fruitful in our work, whatever work we are given to do. It may sound like a cop-out to some of you, but the fact is, whether you have children or not, you still have work to do. You still have a reason to be on this planet. Some of you will say that if you have children, that your children are your reason, and that's great. They're going to grow up and move away, but, if that's how it is, then that's your prerogative. But we're all here for a reason, as far as I'm concerned. That includes those of us who are childless not by choice. Childlessness does not mean we do not have a calling on our lives. It does not mean that we should be forgotten, blamed, or ignored. It simply means that our hopes and dreams did not work out the way we expected, and that God does not say yes to every prayer. It's really that simple. I'm hoping that the church can speak more to that unanswered prayer, or no. I wish the church would speak more on no. And so hopefully the church is hearing me. I've been talking about the church for quite some time, especially around the issues of Mother's Day. And hopefully they're hearing as I continue to talk about this subject. And I really appreciate the group member who asked this question. This was an awesome episode to research, and I hope you got something good out of it. I know I did. I really enjoyed the research on this. Hey, here's to hoping the church will see us, because I know God does. So thanks for tuning in today. Remember that there are articles, links, and all that good stuff in the show notes. The scriptures that I mentioned, links to, there was one one story that I found when I was doing research for how far back childlessness goes. So there's a great article on that in here. And there's an article on a woman who died recently. I can't remember what country in Africa, might have been Nigeria, but she apparently was a celebrity in her country and she just died suddenly. And so there should be an article on her in there too. There are 3 articles in here, and the scriptures that I mentioned, and actually 4 articles as I look at the show notes. Anyway, again, this is my 5-year anniversary episode. I'd like to thank the wonderful women in the Facebook group, the wonderful supporters in the supporters group, the listeners, you all over the world, thank you. Those who have subscribed to the podcast, thank you for subscribing. That means that you get that new episode dropped into your podcast player every time a new episode comes out. And that means it's a little bit more of a commitment. I mean, you can always unsubscribe at any time. That's not a problem. I know this, but I feel like when you subscribe, you've got a bit more of commitment going, and I appreciate that. So thanks for subscribing. If you ever have any questions on how to subscribe, let me know. Remember, I have all of the podcast players on my iPhone, and I'm subscribed to my podcast as well as other podcasts on all of those podcast players. So if you have any questions about how to subscribe, whether you're iPhone or Android, I can help you. I think with Android, it's pretty simple. You go into the App Store and search for a podcast player, download it, and then search for my podcast, Childless Not by Choice, and you are subscribed. Hit subscribe, and that's it. You're subscribed. iPhone, it's pretty much the same. The only difference is that with iPhone, you already have the Apple Podcast player on your phone. It comes with your phone, where the Android phones do not. They make you go to the App Store. That's really the basic difference. You can find almost the same podcast players, whether it's Android or not, or iPhone, almost all the same podcast players. But again, if you have questions, message me, email me, Civilla@CivillaMorgan.com. and I will do my best to help you. And at some point, I'm going to do a video on how to subscribe. I keep saying it. I haven't done it yet, but I will. I promise. And last but not least, well, thank you to the newsletter subscribers. I haven't posted anything in there in quite some time. Life has been crazy. I'm sorry. I thank you for continuing to be subscribed. All the back issues are there, and I want to at least go quarterly. It used to be monthly. I'm thinking of just going quarterly on the newsletter. So I thank you if you're subscribed, which you can do by going to childlessnotbychoice.net or CivillaMorgan.com and just enter your name and email address and you're subscribed. It's really that simple for the newsletter. Okay. And last but not least, thank you to those, again, who give financially on a monthly basis. I know your money could be going to other things, and instead you've gone to patreon.com/childless not by choice, and you've opted to give a certain amount of money every month. It is appreciated. And again, if you want to give a one-time gift, anything will do. Anything helps the platform, because whether you give or not, I have to make these payments to the podcast player, the podcast host, the website my maintenance gentleman. So just know that every month there's money going out to create these episodes, and so anything would be appreciated. Thanks again. Thanks for listening, and until next time, have a great one.